All right. Well, welcome. Welcome to the RICO 12 speaker meeting. I'm really grateful to have you all here. My name is Justin, and I'm an addict. And thanks to my God, the steps, and the fellowship of other addicts, I am sober one day at a time since June 19th, 2015. And for that, I am beyond grateful. Welcome to the RICO 12 speaker meeting. We are an organization whose addictions include alcohol, drugs, lust and sex, food and gambling, just to name a few. We come together from all places, faiths, and backgrounds to learn the similarities of addiction and to gain tools and hope from others who are walking a similar path. We invite recovering addicts with at least 1 year sobriety and who are actively working their recovery in their respective fellowships to share their experience, strength, and hope on a live Zoom meeting each Friday at noon Central Time for 20 to 25 minutes. Then we, the live audience, get the opportunity to ask questions of the speaker for another 20 to 25 minutes. In order to ask questions, please, if you are here live, please type them in the Q&A link at the bottom of your Zoom window. Now, if you're hearing this podcast recorded and would like to participate as a live audience member in the future, or even if you'd like to be a guest speaker in the future, please go to www.rico12.com, that's RECO12.com, to learn more and submit your email address there to receive weekly invitations or to submit to become a guest speaker. RICO 12 is an ad-free service, and we appreciate your help in keeping it that way. We gratefully accept contributions to help cover the costs of the Zoom platform, podcast platform, web hosting, and administrative costs. The guest speaker also chooses a fellowship or recovery-centered organization to which the majority of contributions from that week's meeting will be donated to. To contribute, you can go to www.rico12.com/support, or you can click the link to PayPal there in the chat session of the live meeting, or if you use Venmo, you can also contribute there. Our handle at Venmo is at RICO-12, which is spelled out TWELVE. When you contribute, please specify the meeting number. This is meeting number 4. Last week's meeting was with John G., an alcoholic, and it went very well. If you missed hearing that one or any other meetings that we've done, you can listen to them in podcast form by searching for RICO 12 Speaker Meeting Podcast on virtually any podcast platform that you use. Or you can go to the RICO 12 website and find it under the link podcast. Now, let's introduce our guest speaker for today, Wendi F. I'm really excited to have her here. Her bio reads as follows. Wendi F. is a recovering sexaholic from Colorado. She's been in SA for almost 10 years now and is sober for 8.5 years. Her marriage survived the addiction, and they will celebrate their 23rd anniversary in just a couple of weeks. Congratulations, that's awesome. As group secretary, she was instrumental in getting a dashboard set up on the noon Eastern phone meeting in order to control the safety of the meeting. She has also served as a secretary and intergroup rep for her local face-to-face meetings, helped plan retreats and conferences, and served as a speaker for several of them. Many of her speaker shares are available on different platforms, including the Journey Through Life podcast and Media Fire. Her share here will be about the miracles that continue to happen since working the steps and by maintaining fit spiritual condition. It is entitled Progressively Miraculous. Wendi asks that contributions during this meeting and during this next week or two be sent to Sexaholics Anonymous in order to keep extending the hand for sexaholics around the world. Wendi, take it away. The floor is yours.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Well, that was fast. Wasn't expecting your intro to be that fast. I'm going to be going kind of back and forth between my notes. So I'm Wendi, and I'm a recovering sexaholic in Colorado. I've been sober in Sexaholics Anonymous for 8.5 years. And throughout this time, I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned about my negative attitudes and behaviors. And then I finally learned some tools to become the person that God would want me to be. So I titled this Progressively Miraculous, and it said that this disease is progressively destructive. And I have certainly created a lot of destruction in the wake of my acting out. So I get the progressively destructive part, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on that just because I want to spread the message of hope. If this can happen for me, it can happen for anybody. The key to sobriety and recovery is progressive victory over lust. So progress, not perfection. And I have talked a bit about the progress I've made in my program in other shares, and also with sponsees. And now, because of that progress, I can see all the miracles that have happened in my life since I experienced true recovery. And I'm able to share that with other people. It's great. So today I want to talk about a different progression. The progression of the miracles in my life. Not only how many have happened, but also how they've grown the more I've let go. So God brings me bigger and bigger miracles as long as I stay in fit spiritual condition. The first miracle that God has given me is life. So talk about progressively destructive. The places that I went and the people that I went with were continually less and less safe. I could have easily been beaten, killed, and I was raped several times. And this is a reality of the progression of destruction. And the miracle part of it is that God protected me and saved my life through all of that, even though I wasn't aware. And that in itself is a miracle to me. So I first learned about SA doing research on information I got from a TV show about sex addiction. And I was watching it, and my husband was downstairs, and I thought, oh, this is perfect. My husband can't leave me. I'm sick. Well, this was obviously just an attempt at another big manipulation. And I realized, the miracle happened when I realized that I was there to save my life, not just my marriage. And my marriage wouldn't matter if I'm dead. So that's kind of my feeling on that. So the miracle there is that I'm alive, and I have learned to save my life, work my program, whether my marriage survived or not. In my household growing up, we never had any religion or spirituality, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And my idea of God was someone to blame when things went bad. I was never grateful. I was always looking for someone to blame. And especially if things didn't go the way I wanted them to go. So maybe they weren't bad, but it wasn't what I wanted. So I remember just throwing temper tantrums, literally, as an adult. The only thing I wasn't doing was stomping my feet. So anyway, as the miracles continue to grow in my life, not just in recovery, but in my entire life, I now have a two-way relationship with a higher power. I no longer blame God for the things that happen. I know that as long as I'm performing God's will, which is my part, God will take care of me and all my needs. I have experienced the miracle of trust and humility. That's big. I only relied on myself, and I used my ego to defend myself my entire life. So this was a huge miracle for me. And I also know I don't know what's best for me. I get that message from God. It's so much easier when I try to stop forcing outcomes and rely on my own human power. I never would have thought in a million years I'd be thinking this way or saying that out loud. So another miracle, another thing that God has blessed me with is true friendships, a fellowship of people who think like me, and we're all looking toward the same solution. I never realized how much in my head I was. I always was outgoing. So I would have never said that I was isolated, but I was. In my head, I was still alone. And the miracle is that now also, here's another miracle. I have friendships with women. So in my addiction, women were competition. And through humility, really, through working the steps, I've learned to be closer to everybody, not just men, but I can now have friendships with women. And I have one sister that I'm especially close with. And she knows who she is, and she knows she's a miracle in my life. So other miracles, well, let's see. I've experienced a calmer, slower pace in my life. My financial fears have been replaced with trust that I'll be given everything I need. And just so you know, that takes practice. That's not something that comes easily for me. But when I do, I am given everything I need. And I only know that because I'm paying attention to what God wants and not what I want. So let's see. I notice the good things in life and express gratitude for them. So even just little things like, oh, the light turned green. It's silly. I know it sounds silly, but things like that used to really aggravate me. Like, why is this light red? I'm in a hurry. I need to go. I. But now I can just appreciate just the little things. I know it sounds silly, but so I've learned how to stop struggling and surrender. And I've learned, here's the big miracle, that by giving up my self-proclaimed freedom, I'm truly free. I've rebuilt relationships with my husband and my kids, and they're flourishing. They no longer are obligations to me. I really experienced the joy of being a mom and a wife. I'm living, I'm not surviving. That is a big miracle for me. I'm no longer demanding, nagging, yelling, or fighting to be right. I do my best to surrender and stay out of the way of their higher power taking care of them. And he does. Another miracle. Let's see. And other than my new relationship with my higher power, the biggest miracle happened for me just about 2 weeks ago. So, I've been in SA for about 9 years, and my husband has always been supportive of my recovery. He never discourages me from attending meetings or conferences. He sees the change in me, and he knows immediately if I'm not working my program. But he's never really wanted to be involved, and he doesn't really ask a lot of questions. And the other day, he sat me down and said, I need to talk to you. And of course, my first response was, oh, crap, what did I do? I had a moment of panic, and he started to tell me how he's going to this group for men. And as he was telling me, it's basically loosely based on Essanon. And again, my first reaction was panic, like, oh my gosh, what if he discovers that this marriage is still really unhealthy? Or, I guess my thought was, what if he learns the truth about me? That's pretty much been my entire life, is what if they really know the truth about me? But my friend, who I mentioned earlier, reminded me that, this is a miracle. What if? There's no answer to that question. All I have is right now. That question is pointless to me. What if? So answer it. What if? Well, there is no answer to that. So when she said that to me and she didn't say it like, Wendi, you need to see this as a miracle. Her response was, wow, that's a miracle. And I could just feel all the panic and all the stress come out of me. He's finally taking care of himself. He has seen what I have and wants it for himself. I never pushed it on him. There were other people who tried to 12-step him, but he was pretty much put off. Yeah, so he's taking care of himself, and he's sharing with me. This is, I don't see how this could be anything other than a miracle. This would have never happened in our marriage 10 years ago. So anyway, I really, truly believe that my husband is another miracle in my life. And I obviously didn't appreciate that until, working through my steps. And it actually probably wasn't even until about 2 years into my program when I was really torn down everything inside of me and started building it back up and started to notice the miracles, which started to notice him. And that's what he's always wanted. So I'm just going to wrap up. I mentioned that I came into SA to save my marriage, and then I realized I came in to save my life. My marriage, I mean, God put us together. God has kept us together, and we are both consistently working on being better people than we were when we got into the marriage. And yeah, that's a miracle. It really just warms my heart. So anyway, there are some other miracles I've experienced. I mean, I could talk for probably an hour and just go on and on about all the stuff that's happened and that I've noticed, that I've been grateful for, that I've been able to go to God, even in a moment of confusion and stress, and say, God, you're the miracle in my life. What's your message? Anyway, so these are some of the miracles. And as long as I continue to work the steps and practice the principles in my life, I will continue to see miracles. They continue to grow. And like I said, in 20 minutes, I couldn't really tell you all of them, but I can tell you that all the miracles that have happened in my life, whether they're big or small, are a gift from God. And I could never be grateful enough. So I just want to, again, offer that there's hope in this program. I came in, I was broken down, sad, just ruined. And I now have experienced these miracles in my life, but it didn't come easy. I worked for it. But the biggest thing that comes from that work is peace and serenity, happy, joyous, free, everything we can do to be happy. And that's, for me, that's the part of the program that I want to share. Thank you all for being here and for listening, and don't give up before the miracle happens.
Awesome, Wendi. I'm grateful for that. I love how you said, what if they really know the truth about me? You know, you're questioning when that miracle with your husband happened, and then the what if questions, what if perspective, and your friend's response, wow, that's a miracle. I think that's something that's kind of opened my eyes to a different perspective when others, and my wife can probably relate to that. She sought healing long before I did in my in my addiction and my addictive behaviors. I'm grateful eternally for that, for her willingness to do that. So now, Wendi, before we read the questions that have come in, and a reminder to our listening audience, if you have questions for Wendi, please type them in the Q&A link down at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you hover down there, you'll have two little speech bubbles, Q&A. Type in questions that you want to ask her, and I'll relay those to her. But if you wouldn't mind, Wendi, taking just, and this might be a surprise, I apologize if it is, taking just a minute and explaining why you would like contributions that come in through this to go to SA, and what you feel the importance of that is.
Okay. So first of all, the reason is because SA saved my life. And I feel like I could never pay that debt back enough. And also because of COVID, there haven't been face-to-face meetings, and the international conference was canceled, and they're really, really low on money. And the people in that office, again, talking about miracles, they are miracles. They work miracles in that office. They help people start meetings. They work on conferences. They, a lot of the administrative stuff that seems minute, but has a huge domino effect on the whole program. So, and like I said, SA saved my life. They send people books for free. And the only way they can do that is by us supporting ourselves. So it says that we're self-supporting, and at times, maybe it's not possible to support, but right now, SA really needs the help. And like I said, they saved my life. So thank you if you can donate, thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Wendi. And if you, as a listening audience, if you're feeling a nudging to make a small contribution, please do so through the links here in the chat that I put up, or also at rico12.com/support, or you can go directly to sa.org and donate through there, whatever you choose to do. All right. So it's now time for Wendi to answer some of our questions, and I've received several. and we'll get to as many as we can during the next 25 minutes or so. First one comes from Gerard P., and he asks, what is your daily spiritual routine? Is it unvarying?
Hi, Gerard. Yeah, I have to admit that I don't really have a solid spiritual routine. I have my regular prayers that I say, like when I walk out my door, my front door, if I've forgotten to pray, I have this huge mountain there to remind me. And so sometimes I don't have, that regular spiritual routine. But the one thing that I always do is make sure that I'm always in contact with God. So throughout the day, I will, I guess it's basically spot check inventories is what you could call them. I just call them a moment with God where I'll just check in and say, hey, I got to remember you're there for me and that you're in charge. Thanks for reminding me to be humble today. So I say a lot of prayers all the time. I just want to maintain a constant contact. That's my goal.
Awesome. And that, I think that does help. And there's a follow-up question that came in, and I will tweak it a little bit to fit your previous answer. If you miss a day of your morning conscious contact with God, of your morning routine, do you consider it a failure? And if either way, what do you consider a failure in your life is the follow-up question there.
Well, first of all, I don't forget. I never forget to talk to God, even if it's not, like I said, even if it's not sliding out of bed and hitting my knees every morning, which I do that too, but not every morning. But I can't let a day go by without conscious contact with God. I go back into ego and my disease is just right there going, yay, welcome back. So, no, I don't. And I mean, as far as a failure, it's hard because I think the only failure would be that I don't keep going to meetings, that I don't work my program, that I don't keep in touch with God. And if that happens, I mean, the consequences happen naturally. And usually I can immediately feel in my stomach that if I'm not doing something I'm supposed to be doing, or I don't know, it's hard. I don't really feel much of a failure because I know God is forgiving.
Beautiful. I love that. So I got another question in, and it kind of piggybacks onto one that I wrote during this. So I'm going to kind of try and merge these together.
Okay.
Stereotypically, Wendi, most sex, lust, porn, etc. addicts are perceived to be men, at least by the way I've experienced this. What is your perception on that? And then what is your experience and hope for the many women who suffer in silence and perhaps even in shame?
Very good question. Well, it is true that the stereotype is men, and it is true that there are more men in program than there are women. I would say that I think that maybe for men, it's more socially acceptable to be, quote, a player. And so it's easier, I guess, to be seen as a sex ed. I don't really know the answer to that question other than for what I did. And that is, for me, I learned that by going to mixed meetings, and a lot of times when I say mixed, it was me and men, I learned to relate to the opposite sex in a healthy way. And that was really important for me. And I will say, if there are women that are on this Zoom call that are feeling alone, or if you guys know any women that are needing help, our fellowship of women is growing. We're not as small as we used to be. There's lots of women's only meetings. There's lots of women's WhatsApp groups, lots of ways to get connected to other women. And by the way, the SA Central Office also does that. So that's what I would say is to just continue to reach out.
Awesome. I appreciate that. And it is, I think it's fantastic that more platforms, more fellowships are opening up to women sex addicts who I think, at least in my narrow experience, kind of have limited access to those things. Follow-up question on that. Wendi, how did your addiction start? And this person, this anonymous attendee who typed this in says, I have daughters, and I guess I always thought they would never have any issues with SA issues, but maybe my thinking is incorrect. So tell us a little bit about that. What is your experience and answer to that?
Well, I might be kind of a different case. I really believe I was born to be a sex addict. I was born into, my parents were only 16 when I was born. I was supposed to be put up for adoption. My life was chaos before I was even born, basically. But I think a lot of it has to do with my self-esteem at that time, and the communication. Like the communication that I got from my parents was that I was to be entitled, angry, taking, and I was exposed to a lot of sexual activity at a really young age. I mean, my parents it was the 60s. So, a lot of that contributed, plus I was molested. So all of that contributed to me becoming a sexaholic, mostly because I had no other way to identify myself, really, I guess. And as far as, I guess if you're trying to look for signs in your daughters, I don't know. It's hard because, like I said, I was just open and free and my parents didn't care. And so it's hard for me to say other than lead by example. That's worked really well with my kids lately. And communicate. Talk to your kids and talk to them honestly and openly. I mean, obviously you're not going to go, okay, I'm a sex addict. Are you? But, find a way to communicate and always invite God into any conversation. I always invite God, especially into something like that. I hope that helps.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Wendi. Another question that is here. You mentioned in your presentation a two-way relationship with your higher power. Can you tell us about what that looks like in your daily life? What a two-way relationship with your higher power looks like?
Yeah. So basically what I mean by that is I receive God's love or message, and my part is to extend it out into the world. So it's a two-way relationship. I listen, he gives. He's the director. I'm just his servant, So and also that also means that when I am praying, I have to remember to listen. So when I'm done praying, and I always have to remember to not pray for only my own selfish needs, but I have to remember to listen. And a lot of times people think that's funny. I just sit there, but I'm not just sitting there. I'm getting a message. And then my part of that relationship is to carry that message. So that's what I mean by that.
Awesome. And people who may question the receiving of, a message from God, how do you distinguish that in your life, Wendi?
Typically, it's anything that goes against what I want to do.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, for instance, if I'm saying, oh my gosh, my mom really made me mad, I'm going to call her and tell her. And then I'm going to sit there for a minute, and then I'm going to go, oh, that's not what God would want. I'm going to listen. I'm going to sit and listen before I react. I guess it's more of a pausing before I react. I'm not as reactionary anymore, especially if it's a negative reaction. I can learn to stop that and think and pause before I react. I don't know if that answers the question.
I think that's great, and I love the if it's something that goes against me, it's probably kind of that.
It's true.
Yeah, it goes against the natural urges that I have or desires that I have. I really appreciate that. That's good. All right. And one other thing that you mentioned, and it wasn't in these words, I don't think, but it was in your presentation, something about freedom through surrender. You talked about how surrendering everything made you free.
Oh, yeah.
And I love that concept. Can you expound on that just a little bit and explain maybe a little bit more in the terms that somebody who may be brand new to this whole recovery thing, this whole concept of surrender, and explain your experience with that?
Sure. So the words that I use are in the literature. It's self-proclaimed freedom. And so what that means, and it's so weird because that's exactly what I thought I was, free to do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, with whoever I wanted. Because like I said, my parents weren't, I was basically neglected. I was treated as an adult when I was 8. So, but I always thought, I never wanted to be in a relationship for very long because that was going to compromise my freedom. I was free to be with whoever I wanted to be with, to do what I wanted, to take what I wanted, to be a jerk if I wanted to be. And that freedom kept me in bondage. Like I was wrapped up in myself. I don't know how any other way to explain bondage other than a visualization of me just wrapped up in ropes, and it's just me. And that's what that self-proclaimed freedom was not free at all. It came with a lot of high prices. So when I say now that I don't have that, I'm truly free, I go by God's definition of what being free is, and that's surrender. That being free of not having to be right all the time, the freedom of being able to enjoy life, the freedoms that are there for everybody. But for me as an addict, I didn't see them and I didn't take them. And my proclaimed freedom was killing me. God's is helping me live.
That's beautiful. Your proclaimed freedom was what was killing you, and God's freedom is what is helping you live. Can you identify the moment, or maybe a series of moments, where that image of the ropes that had you bound started loosening and falling off?
It was probably, I could feel them. I would say step 3 is probably where I started feeling like, okay, I really don't have all this under control, and started to like untying the knots. But I would say it wasn't really for me until step 7, when I really, really, really grasped the concept of humility. So humility for me is surrender. Yeah, the humility part was what really got me to where I could say, wow, I'm not all that, and that's when I really like shed all of the self-will, I guess. I tried to hold on to self-will. I still do. I go back and forth all the time, but I don't have those ropes binding me anymore. I have a solution today. I have a choice, and I have tools through SA that I can stay out of that bondage.
I like that. One of the biggest telltale signs in my life for when I am going to get in trouble is when I have the thought in my mind, I got this.
Yeah.
And that is a big red warning flashing light to me. And this is just a question that came to my mind out of the blue. What does that? Can you maybe share an experience about something like that in your life, where you have maybe a flashing red light when a certain thought comes into your head? You got to go, whoop, put your head on a swivel and see what's going on, why you're feeling that way and thinking that way.
Well, usually I start to feel irritated or agitated. That's when I know something's wrong. I mean, anytime anything's wrong, it's me. It's something's disturbed in me. And I have to be able to, again, this is one of the miracles. I've learned to slow down. I have to, again, ask what are the motives. And I lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry.
No worries. Just talking about, things that cause that red flashing light to go off and make you go, oh, I got to be aware of this.
Yeah. There are definitely things that are automatic triggers, like not looking at people, not staring at people, not trying to objectify people's body parts. But I think the biggest sign, like I said, is if I start to feel upset in my stomach, I know something's wrong. And that's always been a key for me. In fact, when I did finally let go of the ropes and came free, I had a knot in my stomach my entire life. It went away. I don't have that knot anymore. So when I do feel disturbed and feel that knot, that's when I know, okay, I need to sit down and figure out what's going on. Also, if I'm in the middle of a heated conversation and I find myself, doing the character defects of self-pity and all of that, then I also know that that's a red flag. That's why I invite God into all my interactions, so I can be aware of that.
Yeah, I love how you just shared that you had gone your whole life with a knot in your stomach. Yeah. You may or may not have been aware of it your whole life, but all of a sudden it went away as that happened. And I think that has a great imagery to the wrapping, being bound in ropes in bondage, basically. Thank you for sharing that. If there are any other questions that anybody from the audience has, please type it into the Q&A. If not, we're going to give Wendi here a minute or two to wrap things up with a closing remark, but some other insights or words of wisdom you might have for us here.
So right now I'm just praying for God to give me the right words. In closing regarding this conversation, I just would say that if you're just starting out in this program, you may not be noticing the miracles yet. You may not be understanding what all this is for. But I can attest 100% that if this program works for me, if you're willing to do whatever it takes to get that two-way relationship with your higher power, you can have all these miracles too. I mean, and don't give up before the miracle happens. I know it's a slogan, but for me, it's a way of life. I hope that's inspiring. I really just want people to just keep coming back.
I love it. I love it. Very inspiring. Thanks again, Wendi. That was a great RICO 12 weekly speaker meeting for all addicts and those wanting to learn more about addiction and the recovery therefrom. Now, if you had any other questions that you would like to ask, you can email those to me at rico12pod@gmail.com. I can relay those to Wendi and we can get that to you. You can go to www.rico12.com/forum and join in our community and ask those questions and answer others' questions that may come up there. I invite the audience to come back next week. If you have not yet gone to rico12.com and submitted your email address, you only need to do it once. Please get in on the invitation list so you can join us live each Friday at noon Central Time. Now, if you'd like to join me in the we version of the third step prayer to launch us off into the rest of the day, this is what Wendi has asked us to do. Please join with me now. God, we offer ourselves to thee, to build with us and to do with us as thou wilt. Relieve us of the bondage of self, that we may better do thy will. Take away our difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those we would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May we do thy will always. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. So work it. You're worth it.
Thanks, Justin. That was awesome.
Thank you, Wendi. It was awesome. Thank you all for coming, and we will see you all next week.
Drifting on the landscape of this life of mine. Peaks too high to conquer, streams too wide to cross, troughs too deep to walk through without incurring loss. Yet here I am, still standing tall, despite the rough terrain. One like me survived the storms and walked through wind and rain. Still standing, I will fight the good fight, still searching